I'm very curious to see how this goes, I gotta be honest. I've been looking at it for so long on the internet. We'll see what happens. How you doing today, folks? Today is going to be the first in my 4-part series about the Logosol Big Mill Timberjig. I got this for Christmas this year, and with the really cold weather we've had, I haven't had a chance to put it together and make a review about it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to break this video down into 4 parts. The first part is going to be about assembling the Timberjig. The second part is going to be about assembling the wooden brace for the Timberjig. And then the third part is going to be me actually using the Big Mill Timberjig. And then the fourth part is just going to be like an overall thoughts of what I think of the Timberjig. And I guess I'll just start by giving a little bit of background. What this Big Mill Timberjig is it's what's known as a chainsaw mill. So what you do with this thing, I don't know if you can see on the box here, right there, it's a bracket you can put on your chainsaw so you can cut slabs off of wood. Now the two big names in chainsaw mills are the Alaskan sawmill and the Logosol Timberjig. Those are the two most popular ones. There are other brands out there. And for whatever reason, I really like the look of the Timberjig better, so I went with that one. Now the reason I like the Timberjig better is because, first off, you can get just this one piece and give it a try, but also you can keep working your way up. This Timberjig will work. They have a metal piece, which I think is around $800 or $900, that you can use to set the height very quickly when you're cutting wood and milling wood. And then if you like that, you can actually step up to a sawmill that's going to hold your chainsaw off the ground and your log off the ground, and all you do is crank a couple knobs to lift, raise and lower your chainsaw. And they have a ton of other stuff. So this to me just had more options. As far as, it's a cheaper entry point, yes, but in the overall, if I end up doing this more, I like the fact that even if the next step would be the Big Mill Basic, and the Big Mill Basic really simplifies the process. The Big Mill Timberjig is made in Sweden, and I just want to say when I got the box, I took the box inside the house, and I stepped on the scale. Then I put the box, picked up the box with the scale, and the box weighs about 10 pounds, and it definitely has a very heavy feel to it. It doesn't feel like some quickly thrown together thing. But let's go ahead and start the unboxing, and we'll show you what's inside. So here's the box it comes in, and we'll just go ahead and slide her out. And I haven't taken any of this stuff out of the box yet, but the first thing I want to show you is just this very nice instruction book. I've been online, they have most of the directions online, but this instruction book, it's very straightforward. It's very, it breaks it down step by step as far as assembling everything, and it gets into some tips on cutting as well. And the other thing I like about this instruction book, it's on high quality paper, but the other thing I like is that it's, this unit is made in Sweden, and so this must be a translation, but the translation reads very well. Whoever did the translating, it makes sense. A lot of times if you put stuff together that's made in other countries, it can be a little bit garbled, but it makes complete sense. I have not put the CD in yet, but they do send you a CD as well. And then here are the pieces to the Big Mill Timberjig, and I don't know what any of this stuff is yet, but this is what it looks like, and this is pretty solid actually. Okay, and there's a piece of metal for you, and that's a pretty good sized piece of metal. That's nothing flimsy. So maybe what we'll do is I'll go ahead and see if I can get all this stuff unboxed, and then I'll put the camera back on once I get all the parts out of here. So this is everything that comes in the box, and I want to say, right away that I thought there were going to be more pieces. I'm kind of liking the fact that it doesn't look quite as complicated to build as I thought it was going to be. And right off the bat, we can get rid of these. We'll not get rid of these. We can put these aside. These brackets are used for making the holder for the rail that you run the timber jig along. So all these screws, these are wood screws, and these we're going to just put aside for now. And then what these guys here are, this is how you actually connect the timber jig to your chainsaw. The bolts that you normally use to keep your the cover on, that covers the clutch, you remove those bolts, you put these on, and then this somehow will figure out how, ends up going through something, I'm not sure which piece yet, and then you put the bolts that came with your saw on top, and that's how you keep all this on the saw. Okay, I can't say it's a difficult thing to build, but I will say it's the first time I'm building it, and you know, you got to kind of pay attention to what you're doing. The first thing I'm learning is that this is called the side plate, and this is called the bottom plate. And in step one, I just spent about 15 minutes trying to figure out what I was doing wrong. You're supposed to take these rollers and connect these guys to them. Now these guys, they were in a separate bag. One is longer and one is shorter. So what you want to do is take the longer thing here, you put that through the little wheel, and then there were 4 bolts in that bag as well, and there was a longer bolt and a shorter bolt. I don't know if you can see that. But what you want to do is take the longer bolt and the longer thing that goes through the middle and put that on. And by doing this, this roller is supposed to be able to spin. So let's see how that works out. So by using the longer bolt on the side plate and the longer thing that goes through the wheel, you're left with a little bit of a extension there. So when you tighten this bolt, it'll bottom out and it'll still be able to roll, and that's what you want. And what they want you to do is push it against the table so that that roller is right at the edge of the plate. And then we can just go ahead and tighten it up. And we'll see how this goes. I may end up taking it apart and putting a little bit of Loctite on this, because if I lose these pieces, it's going to be a week or so before I can get some replacements. So this is the side plate, longer bolts, and now they spin very nicely. Then on the bottom plate, we're going to take the shorter things here that go through the bottom. Then you take the bolt in the washer and you put that right through there. So now we're just going to take these nuts here, you put them in this plate like this, and then you screw these knobs to it. So now we're going to take the dimension lock and insert it into the dimension plate from the side. And then we're just going to turn these. I think it's supposed to go this way. I think it's supposed to go this way, so these are higher, and then we're supposed to turn these alternating until they bottom out. They're not threading into anything. I'm kind of curious where this is going to end up. So this is called the scale bale, and there were 2 bolts on the bottom of this. So we took those 2 bolts off, and we're going to pass the scale bale through the dimension plate. With the scale turned outwards, and I'm going to assume we're outwards right now. Put a drop of oil on the screws and fasten the scale bale to the bottom plate. So we're going to put a drop of oil on these guys. And then this is the bottom plate. And we need 2 washers. There's these 2 big washers here we're supposed to use too. And this is aluminum, so we're going to be very careful not to do anything silly and strip it. There we go. As I was saying, this is aluminum, so we're going to be very careful not to do anything that's going to strip it. And that one's starting to fight me, so I'm going to just back it off a little bit and give it another try. Much better. We're going to check that the dimension plate can move freely along the scale bale, which it certainly seems like it can. And then we're going to attach the side plate with the rollers to the bottom plate. So that's going to go over here. When in the basic setting, the outer edge of the side plate should be in line with the outside of the dimension plate's fence. So we want to line these 2 plates up. And then we put our nuts in there with our washer, and this one's got a washer on both the top and the bottom. Let's see if we can pull this off. We might end up, yeah, we'll just get them on hand tight and then we'll tweak it once we get a little closer. So I think that's pretty much it. There's one more piece we need to put on here, which is the guide bar support bolt. Let's see how that goes. So the guide bar support bolt is going to go through here. And this is a classic case of don't tighten everything up until you make sure you got everything fit up right. So I'm just going to loosen up these 2 bolts a little bit, see if I can get this guy in, and then start tightening again. Now the guide bar support bolts, they're supposed to be first you put a lock nut on it. No, there's a lock nut. So there's a lock nut that goes on this and then a washer. This is not supposed to be a lock nut, so we're going to go with the I only have 2 bolts left, so we're going to go with this one here, which is not a lock nut. And I'm sure this will make more sense when I start to fit the chainsaw. And then what we're going to do is put this washer through. And then put that through the hole. And then there is a lock nut over here. So we'll just hold on to this. So we'll just hold on to this and tighten up this lock nut on the bottom. And I'm sure this will make complete sense a little farther down the road, because I bet you that's going to come up a little bit. So what happens is you put your chainsaw, the two bolts that hold the bar on, you put them through here, and the bar of the chainsaw goes through here. And then this bolt is just supposed to keep your chain, your bar and your chain, from bumping in over here. So once I get the saw on, I can adjust that a bit, or when I'm fitting the saw, so that doesn't, the chain doesn't brush this piece. I'm assuming that's what that's there for. And I'm hoping I got, let's see, so when you're cutting, I'm hoping I got this piece, it's supposed to point towards the outside. I'm hoping I got that right, but it wouldn't make sense to have this piece pointing this way, because then the chainsaw is going to be here and you won't really be able to read it if I put the scale bale the other way. But it looks pretty common sense. So if you raise that up, if you want to cut something that's 2 inches, you just screw that down. And then you slide it along. So that's going to control the depth of your chain. And if you want to cut something really deep or narrow, it starts out at, looks like it goes down to a 1/2 inch. So if you set it like that, you'd be at a 1/2 inch and you could cut siding or something. So I will admit it took a little bit of thought to put the thing together, but I can't really say it's hard to put together. I'm going to say it's the first time putting it together. I do have 2 large washers left over, and I'd bet dollars to donuts that when I put the chainsaw on, these are going to go between the saw and this bolt here, or over here somewhere. Actually, they probably go over here somewhere. And then I'll just go through and tighten up all the bolts, but that's pretty much what you're looking at. You know, when I was putting this together, I couldn't figure out where these wheels should go. But the way that's going to work is the wood I got is 5 inches thick. So you want to make sure you have these wheels as far out as possible for maximum stability, but not too far that they go off the board. So I'm going to put it so the edge of those wheels is just under 5 inches. And if I had bought a 6 inch wide plank, I could have used that all the way out. But that's how that works. You just adjust this guy to fit whatever type of board you're running it on. I'm very curious to see how this goes, I gotta be honest. I've been looking at it for so long on the internet, we'll see what happens. Okay, so we have my, this is a steel 036. This chainsaw is actually smaller than they recommend for milling. They recommend a chainsaw that's 90 cc's or more. and I'm not really sure exactly how many cc's this saw is. I think it's around 60 or so. So we're not going to go, we're not going to go crazy with this, but we'll give it a try. But the first thing they want us to do is take off the nuts on the bar and then remove the bark guard so it doesn't get in the way. So let's go ahead and do that. And I'm going to make sure I put these pieces somewhere where I'm not going to lose them. So now we'll go ahead and put the chain back on, and we'll put these where the nuts that hold the cover on were. Well, that's good. These are the same size as the nuts that were there, so you can use the same scrunch to tighten these guys up. Okay, so now we're supposed to it's probably easier upright. Now we're supposed to take this guy I think I built it completely backwards. This is going to run like that. Which is going to go like that. Okay, so this goes like this. Put your bar through there. And then you put that like that. And they want you to mount your saw as far forward as possible. And I need to adjust this nut here that adjusts the height, the nut here that basically props the bar up as a resting place for the bar. I need to tweak that. So what happens is this bolt right here, there's a bolt right here that just kind of doesn't, here you go, it doesn't really hold the guide bar up, but it just keeps it from sagging. So you just need to adjust that. And it takes a little bit of effort. You got to take it on and off before you use the saw with the timber jig. The guide bar is resting on that nut very nicely. So the way this thing works is we're going to set a wooden rail on the log, and then you'll just run the saw. You can just run the saw along that wooden rail. You just put your hand near the bottom and just hold it and just let the saw do the work and just move through the wood. Once you get a square cant, you can rest this on the wood, and if I move my grease guns, So then we can take the saw and cut the cant by putting this along the edge of the wood. Keep this plate in contact, and you just slide it right along. And I think we're pretty much set. The saw is very heavy. With the additional 10 pounds weight, the saw is very heavy. And I heard somebody commented somewhere that you can't sharpen the saw with this thing on, and you clearly can. I mean, that's if you have to adjust chain tension, you'd have to take it off. But it's really not a huge deal. Now that I've got everything dialed in, it's really not a huge deal to get that tweaked in. Okay, folks. Well, we're all done. We got everything set up here. I have been in the garage for probably a couple hours putting this thing together. You know, read the directions, take it a step at a time. Really wasn't a big deal to put together. It's just the first time, and that's the way it goes. The good news is I kind of have a feel for how things go together. So if something does happen, I know where to go. I have my rollers. Can you see that? These rollers in the front are supposed to roll. These ones in the back are just basically guides. The saw is on. The saw is razor sharp. So the next thing I'm going to do probably tomorrow is I'll see if I can build my piece of wood for resting this on. And then maybe the day after we can go out and cut some wood. So far I'm very impressed. I gotta say I feel awkward. You know, I don't know how much of this I'm going to edit out of me putting it together. Yeah, it was awkward to put together, and but I can't think of many things that go together right away perfectly anyways. And I do feel good that now that I put it all together myself, I kind of know the nuances of it, for lack of a better term. So we'll see how we do putting together the wood guide rail.